Hello, my name is Michael Trajan Todran, and today's guest on the Landscape Architecture podcast is Lys Divine.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Uh, Liz is a graduate student from the University of British Columbia and was selected as the 2020 LAF Landscape Architecture Foundation National Olmsted Scholar, winning the $25,000 prize. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Um, so how does that feel?
It feels great. Um, it's one of those few moments in life where you are actually proud of yourself. So
Hmm.
I'm very happy about that. And also kind of feels unreal
Yeah,
to be completely honest. I really did not expect it. So I'm still kind of riding the wave of unbelief and yeah.
sure. Well, it's going to be very real when you're going to be expected to deliver uh,
Yes.
the point. Yeah. So it's gonna become real very quick. But I think it's important to um, sit in that moment of surrealness for a little while, and
Hmm.
um, I think that's a good spot to be in.
Yeah, totally.
Let's talk about your essay and
Okay.
part one of the essay.
Hmm.
Uh, the question was, or the prompt was, describe your personal development and how it has influenced your direction and vision for the future, and discuss how you see your role in advancing sustainable planning and design and fostering human and societal benefits. We could start with describing your personal development and how it's influenced your vision for the future.
Right. I guess I should start by saying that I actually have my undergrad degree in political science and human geography
From where?
from the University of Alberta.
Okay.
And so I guess from a very long time ago, I've always been interested in bigger societal and structural issues and kind of like the intersection of political systems, social justice, and environmental justice.
Mm.
So that's kind of why I pursued my undergraduate in political science and human geography. And as I was going through the program and graduated, I realized I was interested in urban design. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna look for a master's program in that. And as I was taking more professional development courses and trying to find really what I really wanted to do for my next step, I would talk to different professionals, and it came clear that what I was looking for was in the realm of architecture and landscape architecture. So that, like, I to be honest with you, before doing all that search, I didn't know of landscape architecture. I was not, yes. And so I was taking an urban design class, and I actually one of the professors at UBC actually was in Edmonton instructing the course. And so he starts telling me about this. So it perked my curiosity. I started researching it. And I think the following year, then I attended the career discovery program at the GSD for landscape architecture. And then that's where it all started.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Well, you're already in it now, but
Yes.
soon to be a practicing professional, which is
Mhm.
going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Oh, right. So I was born in Burundi, lived there for the first 10 years of my life, and my family moved to Niger, which is in West Africa. And I used to go to a French school, but decided to switch to an American school. So it was kind of like a very small school, and really wasn't getting that kind of uh, high school, kind of junior high experience that I was looking for. So I told my mom, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to look for a school somewhere else and go. She's like, okay. And I found a school in Edmonton. And that's how I ended up in Edmonton.
Great. And do they speak French in Edmonton?
They don't. They don't really. There is a
Mhm,
francophone community, but
mhm,
it's mostly anglophone. Right. So being from Burundi and moving to Niger, those are completely different climatic zones, different cultures, very, very different. So the cultural shock there started like kind of like piquing my interest. And then everywhere we would travel, I'd be like, oh, here they do this thing here, and we don't do it there. And I remember being in Niger the first time, I was like, these houses don't have roofs because they had these like flat roofs, and I was like, oh, this is very strange. So then everywhere I would go, I started looking out for differences in the built environment and the way people act. I mean, those things always jump out to you. You don't have to seek them out. And I guess being born in Burundi and having had the civil war, like from early on, you start thinking about the political instability as part of a lens that you see the world through. And so that's why questions of politics have always kind of been in the center of how I see different places. And so that's where that comes from.
mm.
Yeah.
And it says here, unfortunately, I am faced with landscape architecture's frequent exclusion of African and indigenous cultural landscapes and design ethos. Um, and then you go on to quote Gandaker. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Right. So actually, that quote comes from a book that talks about sub-Saharan Africa cultural landscapes, and that book was published not more than 3 years ago. And I think it was the first of its kind in landscape architecture. So that really goes to show that the canon of the profession has really excluded um, African landscapes in the study. And also going through my own education, I really couldn't find myself there. And and even living in Canada, and this is indigenous land. This is a country that has like a history of colonialism against indigenous people, and having that history not acknowledged when we're talking about landscape architecture. Um, and this is also something I had encountered in my political science education as well, where there's always this neglect to mention the true historical facts that happen, and it's very problematic, And so it's always something that and it's hard to challenge that. Sometimes when you're already in the system and trying to not rock the boat too much. um, but yeah, the curriculum is really not inclusive, almost false um, in a sense. And yeah, so as I was going through school, I remember trying to do some projects that were trying to uncover what landscape architecture was pre-colonial times in Africa. And I remember even not finding the resources and finding so much time doing research. And obviously, time goes by and you find yourself without the work that you're looking for. So all of a sudden, then there's always a worry that, okay, if I keep doing this is going to come at my disadvantage to be able to complete the work. So there's a conflict. There's also an internal conflict in wanting to do the work and knowing how much challenges and obstacles there are. And yeah, so that's been my experience. But I did decide for my thesis project to do a project on Burundi. And that was very difficult in terms of access to information. But I did it with one of my friends who is in architecture, but we did it. So it's possible. It's just a little more difficult than uh, picking a place that has been documented for years.
Sure, and we should mention that the book is Cultural Landscape Heritage in Sub-Saharan Africa, 2016, from Guntaker. I believe that's how you say his name. I hope so.
I'm not sure.
Okay,
Gantaker? I'm not sure.
sure. And the quote is, "We need to understand the ways in which Blackness has persisted as an exception in garden and landscape studies, even compared to other racialized groups."
I was also going to say that sometimes the language we use is also maybe not that inclusive, because as I was doing this research, and so the word garden is, in landscape architecture, it's one of those keywords. And as I was looking to see what the equivalent of that word is in Kirundi, I realized that we don't have that word.
Mm-hmm.
So then, even when you're trying to explore landscapes of different cultures, you have to know what words to use to get to the information that you need, because gardens, in the way they're conceptualized in a Western way, are not part of the vocabulary or the way of life of many different cultures.
It's very
So
Eurocentric.
very Eurocentric. So then you almost have to deconstruct the idea of what landscape architecture is in order to understand how it applies and fits into different contexts. So also found that to be very interesting.
Yeah, it seems like there's going to be a process of deconstruct, then redefine, or
Mm-hmm.
sorry, deconstruct, help define the past, and then redefine the future.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there should also be, a process of deconstructing implies correcting all the false information that exists in the canon today. So there's some things that really have to be dismantled in a way.
Yeah. Can you
I
give
think.
can you give a synopsis of your thesis, of some of the key points that you're working on in your particular thesis right now?
Right. So actually, the thesis is complete.
Excellent.
We're
Congratulations.
done. Thanks. We're done.
That's a
Officially
big.
graduated this week.
Oh, I thought you had, for some reason I thought you had one more year left. So
No,
congratulations. Well, how does that
thank
feel?
you. Well, it's good, not as great as I had imagined this moment, but
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
was a Zoom meeting that was quite uneventful, but
Yes, yes, yeah.
it's done.
Yeah.
Um, so for my thesis project, as I said earlier, I did it with my friend Karen, who's in architecture,
Hmm.
and so we decided to look at the living spaces of Burundi for 2050, because Burundi is going through like a fast urbanization process, and in imagining how does a city with like a growing number of people, that how could it reflect the culture and identity of its people, but also be rooted in the local landscape. So the way it started is we started a project with looking at all these new town projects that are kind of being inserted in different African countries, that are nothing but kind of a replica of these big towers that you would see anywhere, especially in Asian cities that have like large urban populations. And so you have these global real estate institutions that are going into different African cities and almost copying and pasting these
Yeah.
things, and those kind of environments are almost counter to the identity and the way people move and live and almost go through their daily lives, and meet their own needs, right? So it was really imagining what the future could look like for Bujumbura, which is the capital city of Burundi. And so in doing that, we started with a study and investigation of living spaces pre-colonial times, to understand how spaces were used, kind of like the morphology and also phenomenological experiences of being in those spaces, and then studying today what dance neighborhoods in Bujumbura are like. And so then finding something that reflects those two realities to kind of imagine what this future of living spaces in 2050 is like.
So was your thesis a design thesis as well? Did you have a design component to it, or was it
You
more?
know, there was a design component to it, but it was also, our goal was really about designing a design paradigm as well, where how do you incorporate local culture into spatial design, and also then having a design that like started to show how that could, like, what the outcomes of that could be.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, but
great.
it was a lot of research that was done in unconventional ways, not like really difficult to find the resources to get the information. And I guess the other challenge is that the profession of landscape architecture is really almost non-existent in a lot of African countries. And so that's a challenge in terms of applying that lens in the design of urban environments. And so that's actually why I think we'll probably get to this later. In my essay, I talk about kind of almost bringing it to the forefront as something that people should consider to get into, just so that like the profession can grow geographically, but also in its discourse.
But let's talk a little bit about part 2 of the essay, and that is describe how you would use the funds to advance your leadership in areas of interest and how this will contribute to the discipline of landscape architecture and further the Landscape Architecture Foundation's goal to increase the influence and impact of landscape architects to create more sustainable, just, and resilient future.
So basically, I outlined two main goals. One being that I continue to educate myself and kind of daylight these issues that have been absent in the profession, because it does take time to document and really unpack and understand these things and do it justice, to bring it forth. But also, like, one of the biggest components that I'm really interested in is an outreach program to youth, to indigenous and African, like youth of African descent, to be interested in the profession, because I think that we always talk about designing and creating inclusive spaces, but you can't really do that unless you understand the true experience of people who have been oppressed by the existing spaces that we have. And so I think having people who understand those issues is probably the only way to move forward in creating spaces that are inclusive, right? Because there's a certain understanding that you cannot really get from reading a book, right? There's some visceral things that need to be carried out, and also to empower people to create their own communities as well.
I think that's like the end game, right? Like it seems like empowering people to create their own communities.
Absolutely. Yes. And yeah, totally. Like, I think the solutions need to come from it has to be grassroots, right? So And then the only way to do that is to have people who have the skills
Mm-hmm.
to implement those things. And so that's one big goal of mine, and also documenting the landscapes that haven't been documented,
Yes.
right? And also putting that at the forefront. Obviously, how that's done in the most effective way, that's still something that also is part of the studying again that needs to
Yeah.
happen. But that's definitely is my goal, and I'm very excited to do it. Yeah, and also even thinking about the way that in the design professions, it's kind of like the lead is always this one actor, the designer.
Mm.
But when you look at, for instance, I'm gonna speak more about Burundi because that I know, and it's more of a community process, right? There isn't one singular person who is at the forefront of envisioning one kind of like one reality. So it's like it also becomes about how is it that as designers, how do we take a sit like a step back and also allow the community to be the designers and the creators of these spaces without sacrificing our own egos, I guess, right? Because
Mhm.
you
I
know
guess I guess what that might entail would be to have pride in our role as facilitators as opposed to
absolutely.
designers. So if we
Hmm.
can recognize the beauty and the power of being a facilitator where you're so much more removed and then just allowing
Hmm.
everybody else to rise up.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. And I think maybe that's where um, the strength of our profession is going to come from,
Mhm.
because it if it still keep going back to empowering people, right?
Yes.
Then I think that would be the beauty of it. Oh, all right. So in the project that we did for our thesis, Afrofuturism was a lens that we adopted to work through the project. And so what that is, I don't know, everybody has watched Black Panther, I hope and assume. And so I think that's where it kind of really came to the forefront of people's minds, this idea of Afrofuturism. But it's Afrofuturism, I think, has been adopted by a lot of different artists before that, and it's this idea of looking at the past and really uncovering these erased histories that came as a result of colonialism and all other oppressive histories against people of African descent, and really recovering that to imagine a future, and a future that kind of comes at the intersection with science fiction and technology. And so really having that lens, again, so looking at the past to inform the future. That's what it does. And even though the term implies a specific geography, it's not really just for Africa in a sense. It's really it's a lens,
Mhm.
yes, of almost adopting ancient wisdoms
Mhm.
and studying those and incorporating those into a future vision.
As a recent graduate, are you seeking employment or did you have an internship that you're going to roll into in full employment? Or what are your intentions? How do you want to be involved within the field of landscape architecture?
Right. So I am seeking employment because I think there is something, there is so much to learn. I was working for a year and then stopped to finish up my thesis. Um, I am looking to go into the profession, into the actual the profession like in the conventional way, because we also have to understand that aspect in order to make it better. So I am interested in having that experience, and also just being a part of a team that makes spaces for people. That's very exciting. So yes, I am looking for employment, but again, like as we were talking about before, this idea of documenting African landscapes and kind of like delving into that research is something that I'm very excited about, and would also like to do that. So whether it's a combination of doing both, but at some point, yeah, it has to happen.
All right.
So ideally would be both, or maybe it's a job that where I don't know, work 3 times a week or 2 to 4 times a week and have like some time to keep doing this research on the side. That would be ideal.
What is on your latest music playlist?
All right. Okay. I think I've been listening to a lot of Daniel Caesar, Anderson .Paak, and a French artist, Maître Gims. And I think those 3 have been on my playlist. In the like, I told you earlier, I was working on a competition, so those were kind of on replay, and so that's what I can think of on top of my head. I mean, it's been unreal. My friends, our family, it's I mean, everybody's ecstatic, and I mean, like it's my friends have now decided to call me Freddie, which is strange because
Freddie?
Yes.
How does that work
because Frederick Olmsted.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that. Okay. All right. Okay.
Right. So there's that. They're all weird.
So they're just like kind of teasing you a little bit.
They're really teasing me out of it,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, well, of course, the Olmsted has said this, and it's like,
Oh
I can't breathe
no.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yes.
You should just own it and just be like, yeah, I'm here. I've arrived. What's up?
Oh my goodness. I can't do that.
Yeah, that's probably really bad advice. Don't listen to that.
Yeah. And in terms of the professional, I mean, I've had a lot of great like words of encouragement for my professors and people that I've worked with before. So it was very, very nice for people to almost almost acknowledge your skills, and I don't know if it's something that always seen or it's if this validated. I'm not sure, but it was great. But I've also had people, different firms want to have a conversation. So that's exciting. It's exciting. I'm really excited to.
As like a consultant role?
I'm not exactly sure. They're like, we would like to talk because we think your interests align with ours. So I haven't actually talked to any of them yet because I was busy with the competition. So all that is going to happen next week. So yeah, I'm excited to I was actually excited to hear that from my statement, that people are not only trying to do the work that aligns with the things that I stated, or that are trying to do those things. So, so to me, that's exciting to have those conversations.
What are your thoughts on what's happening right now around the world?
Oh, that's a tough question. There's so much that it's almost hard to articulate because it's so emotional. So emotional for me, and this is the work that I fighting for justice, for Black people has always been something that has been in my work. And so for me, this is exciting because there's momentum behind the movement, but it's not new.
Right.
And I'm very excited, but also very worried that different organizations and people are making statements that are empty, that they're not going to follow through with, because the changes that are coming, although very exciting, are some of them are happening so quick that I am not sure that some people who are making these statements understand fully what the implications of the changes that need to happen are.
And what are the
Right?
changes that need to happen? We could just talk about landscape architecture so we can narrow the field a little bit. But what do you think some of those changes are?
Well, first of all, is having more people at the table and really removing those obstacles for people to be able to enter the profession. And for people who are already in the profession, is to allow those voices to come to the forefront, and not only allow them, but to also embrace them, right? I'm going to talk about my experience as a student because I don't have a lot of professional work experience. But when you try to kind of challenge the way things are done, and because maybe your peers, your professors haven't been exposed to those different things, you meet a lot of resistance, right? So then, even when you're trying to do something different, it's not always encouraged. So really also having people have an open mind about how things can unfold, because there is a power dynamics that exists between students and professors and mentors, or in the workplace, right? And so people who are in power positions really have to almost give those opportunities to explore different ways, right? So that's what I would say needs to be different. I think we need to decenter the Eurocentric kind of lens of the profession, and really have people of color in the profession. I think that's the start. Is you need different voices and different school of thoughts. Otherwise, we're stuck. We're stuck doing the same things.
Yeah, there's two things oh, go ahead.
And I was gonna say also that landscape architecture and all and I'll say architecture as well, is we spend too much time trying to find solutions to problems we don't fully understand.
Yes.
And I think the design profession needs to embrace research a little bit more, and not jump to the pen and the paper too quick to start making drawings. I come from political science. We problematize everything and question everything. And so I quite like that world, but it's also a world that kind of stays in that realm and is happy to question and criticize. And so there's faults there, and there's faults in the design profession where you don't spend time problematizing and jump too quickly to a solution. And the solution that doesn't understand fully the problem is not a solution. Oh, problematize? Oh, it's like the problem. It's like it's questioning and like critically looking at conventionally accepted notions of anything, right? So you just really break it down, and like not always take everything at face value.
I see. So a
Right. And
deeper
so
exploration of what it is that you're looking at.
yes. And yeah, I think we need more professional practices that also engage heavily in research.
Now, the struggles that I'm feeling with within our landscape architecture community is I hear over and over again that uh, that uh, firms have a difficult time justifying the expense of research, but I feel as if though they have given up in regards
Right.
to being able to apply research, um, and I feel like I identify as a natural entrepreneur,
Hmm.
and I feel like if anytime there is a need for something, that there is a way to monetize something. So it's hard to justify firms to spend uh, billable hours for somebody just doing research when there can't be some kind of benefit. But we are creatives and we can frame it in the context to show our clients, to show cities, to show public spaces how research is important. And I feel if we put
Hmm.
more effort into it, we could justify that expense. And we could frame it in the regards to simply better design and more
Absolutely.
inclusive. And so I think that that's one of the roadblocks that I don't think we need to. Uh, I don't think the answer is to just try. I think we have to make it happen. I think we have to
Absolutely. Yeah.
smash the old paradigm that that we can't justify the idea of that's old way of thinking, and I don't want that
Hmm.
anymore. And um, I don't think many people don't want that anymore.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, landscape architecture, we make spaces for people. And I mean, there is a pressure that we all need to feel to get
Yeah.
it right.
Yes.
Right. Because it affects so many people's lives. Right. And there needs to be a lot of diligence and to what we put forward and put out in the world. Right. Like we've put ourselves in positions of power essentially. Right. If you make spaces, you are almost you like you affect people's lives at a very deep level.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For better or for
And
worse.
yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah.
And so acknowledging that means that you actually have to do the research. You have to be aware of what's the effects of what you're doing is,
Yeah.
right? And yes, I mean it's very hard to convince a client that you should pay for this.
You know what?
I'm sure, but
We can. We can. I know that
mhm,
we can. We could figure it out a
right.
way. There's so many different ways where we could do it. We could put aside a percent of design fees that come into that. You could start
Yes.
a an internal lab. Um, you could have uh, interns working on research. You can fund your own projects and be your own client.
Hmm.
There's so many ways that you could do it so it could be justifiable, and
Yes.
I just don't want to hear it anymore. And the reason why
Right.
I'm so frustrated is because I'm the one talking to all these firms and interviewing them and interviewing the people, and I feel like that old mindset is there, and we gotta shatter it. We are
Right.
competent, we are smart, we are creative, we can figure this out. We could figure out
Right.
how to make research viable within
Hmm.
our field. I'm very uh, confident in that we could do it if we set our minds to it and make it a priority.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, I guess it's the willingness
Yeah,
that
the
has to be there
willingness.
first. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um.
I wanted to. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, no. Go ahead.
I wanted to touch back on something else that you said that was very important, but I wanted to give you my take on it. Um,
Hmm.
and that was where firms are making these statements as far as support and the direction that they want to go to. And
Mhm.
absolutely 100%, I agree that a lot of them might not exactly know what they are getting into. And we hope that it is not, I believe many of them are not shallow. There might be a percentage who are just being reactionary and want to show
Mhm.
a good public face. But I think many of them are genuine, and at least I hope so. And
Mhm.
one of the things that when I was a graphic artist and I would attend lectures and seminars about logo design,
Mhm.
and the the firm that designed the Starbucks logo, they said something that's very profound, and I think it's relative to what we're talking about. And they said that when you design a logo, you don't necessarily design where the firm is at, but you also design it where you want to be, a little
Mm.
bit outside of your reach, right? So
Right.
so it's something to aspire to. And
Right.
what I'm hoping is that what you alluded to is that perhaps these statements are a little bit outside of the firm's reaches, the firm's reach right now. I'm
Mhm.
hoping that that's they they kind of put themselves calling themselves out to then aspire to that, and then they're going to figure out how to make it happen, right? So
Right.
that's my hope, that that's the scenario that plays out. And I think on the opposite end of that would be, okay, look, we put out a statement and now we feel good about ourselves and we could go on and doing business as usual, um,
Mhm.
which might be the case for some. But I also feel that your firms are always looking for talent, and I think talent has historically been socially aware, and I think new talent is going to be asking firms, hey, what are you doing? And
Mhm.
I think the firms that want that talent are going to have to really implement solid systems.
Right. I hope so. Yeah, and I hope that everybody's gonna try to keep uh, whatever organizations or structures they're part of accountable to their words, because I mean we've been in schools, organizations, workplaces that have great statements, and then you get there and the way you are treated
Mm,
is not at all. So to me, I guess in my own experience, and it's just that just because something is written down on a piece of paper doesn't actually mean that people are abiding by it,
correct. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So that's why it is a first step, right? To acknowledge an issue, first of all, that's like it's huge because
Hmm.
for so long it hasn't even been acknowledged, right? But I really hope that this just doesn't just become some nice statement that
Sure.
becomes part of a branding. Yeah, that's I guess that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there needs to be.
I think those concerns are very legitimate. And I guess the hard part for me is how to maintain a level of hope and optimism, but at the same time, a level of questioning and um, concern, you know?
Yes.
So, yeah, I mean, only time
Yeah.
will tell, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I am hopeful. Definitely, I'm hopeful.
Hmm.
Um, because
Yeah.
otherwise, it gets bleak and pretty stark really quick. And
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I think your work, like I guess whether you're hopeful or whether you're not hopeful, it almost doesn't matter as long as you keep moving the work forward.
Mm-hmm.
right? And I also imagine that all of us are going to be uh, uh, fluidly moving through different emotions, where at times we might hit a roadblock and completely feel unhopeful for weeks,
Right.
and then a success happens, and
Mm-hmm.
and then you build upon it, and there's energy, and perhaps maybe then something else happens that diminishes that hope. um, but it's a continually moving forward and that progression that's going to supersede in the end. Like, we can't stop the
Mm-hmm.
work. I guess what I'm trying to say, regardless of our stance, whether it's pessimistic or optimistic or opportunistic, the work can't stop.
Yeah, just gotta do it.
Just got to do it.
Yeah.
I hate that Nike claimed that. I feel like
Oh, I know, but it's so good.
it's so good. It's so good, but it's a shoe company. I feel like if landscape architecture would have hired that same PR firm, it would have been better.
Maybe it's not too late.
Oh no, I don't want to get sued by Nike.
Yeah, there's no recovery from that.
Oh yeah, they'll win.
I
Um,
100%.
so, but yes, yeah, that's what I think the work has to. I know I went a little bit on a tangent on that, but I strongly believe that the work cannot stop, and
Yes.
I think that firms. Here's my take on firms and moving forward is
Mm-hmm.
just as individuals, people of privilege need to learn how to sit with discomfort, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
that firms need to be able to sit in discomfort, right? So traditionally, architecture and landscape architecture firms like to posture and put this face on of competency, and we know what we are doing, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why you should pay our design fees in
Yeah.
order for your project, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
is important to show a high level of competency, but I feel in regards of our social movement that maybe the best move is to be able to sit in discomfort and
Right.
like use that as um as a way to move forward.
Yes, totally. Yeah, that is definitely like an essential part of that process of bringing change.
Hmm. So,
Yeah.
well, do you have any closing thoughts?
Well, it's been a great conversation. It's my first podcast, so this was great. Um, I guess I'm excited about the future, but also worried. But
Yeah.
yeah, I guess also what I would say, if there are people who are listening and who are doing the kind of work that I'm trying to do, I'd love to for people to reach out and to collaborate, um, because I
How can
am
people reach you?
by email. So should I say it or could you
Yeah,
share it with them?
I will
Yeah.
share, but if you could say it as well. Yeah.
It's divine, Divine dot NDEMEYE at gmail.com.
Yep, and I'll share it
Um,
in the links as well.
absolutely. Yeah, I would love to have these conversations, be challenged, really just kind of push the agenda, push the discourse, just make it better. So, um, yeah, just want to keep pushing.
Great. I see a couple things that I think um so like I mentioned before, I just identify as an entrepreneur. And I feel like one, I think you should start your own podcast. I think you're a natural. Um, and I think if you want to have a voice, a podcast is a voice that reaches
Right.
thousands and
Yes.
thousands of people. And I think one that you would be a natural at it. To
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you could go back into all of my episodes, and you'll hear
Hmm.
that I've probably only said that one other time, so you know that I'm being sincere.
Oh, I
um,
really appreciate that.
yeah. So one, I think that you would be really good at that, and two, um, I could very easily see you putting your work and monetizing it as a consulting uh, gig,
Mm.
and that I don't know how you feel about that, but um, a lot of firms are probably going to be looking to hire consultants, especially to help them understand how to navigate and how to move through this. And
Hmm.
you could be in a very prime position to uh, offer services like that. And you could pick and choose what you want to do pro bono and what
Hmm.
you would want to do as a consultant.
Yeah, it's I'd always dreamt of doing that consulting work.
Hmm.
I just uh, I always imagined that you need to have a lot of experience under your belt before you can claim
Well,
claim that.
le-
So,
let me tell you what you have. You have firsthand experience. You have your
mhm,
thesis. You have your thesis research. You have
mhm,
the trust and faith of LAF that believes in
mhm,
your work, um, and you have a thirst, and you have the energy. So, um, and what you can offer is that experience, right? You don't have
mhm,
like that. And when you if you do set up a consulting gig, then you lay that out as
mhm,
this is what you're paying for, this is what you have.
mm,
And if they say yes, we are comfortable with your experience, and we would hire you for your perspective on what you've lived so far. Then now what happens is your experience now expands into how to consult a firm on top of your experience. And then the next gig,
mm,
it's compounded, and then you're going to be paid to do research and consult and work with other people. And then you put that into documents, and you move forward like that. You don't have to wait, is what I'm saying. like
mm,
like so if that's something that you were thinking of already, uh then
mm.
I would say go for it, and
Oh,
allow yourself to make mistakes, and allow yourselves to learn, and also allow yourself to uh, have a revenue financially independent from anybody else.
yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's thanks for that. Sometimes it's hard to find that confidence when you're freshly graduated.
Yeah,
There's so much doubt of like you have to have so much experience
yeah.
and
Can I
yeah,
can I
but
tell you
yes.
something? That
Yeah.
that that doubt never goes away.
What?
I'm telling you right
Really?
now, that doubt will never go away. I have interviewed like almost all the leaders in our profession, and at some
Hmm.
point, I can see where their doubt comes in, and it even actually even becomes. They even tell me, "How did I sound? How did I do? Did I sound okay? Was I professional? That doubt?" I'm
Hmm.
telling you right now that it just never goes away. So if you're waiting for that before you start, it's just
Yeah.
not going to happen. It's just being able to sit with it. That's all. It's just being able to sit.
Okay.
You know, and another thing that I would like to share with you is
Hmm.
that, um, who says that you can't collaborate with somebody as a consultant as well. So let's say um, you're still feeling like you're not ready to completely be a consultant independently. Who's to say that you can't reach out to somebody that has 5 years experience with this, and you collaborate and you have two billable human hours as opposed to one,
Right.
you know?
Yes.
So, you know, my big thing is I love showing people that how to monetize their passion projects and how
Hmm.
to get rid of roadblocks in thinking, and to uh, do what it is that you want.
Well,
And
yeah.
here's another.
I guess.
Oh, go ahead.
Huh? Yeah.
Uh, um,
I said. Oh, I guess we're gonna have to talk some more about this.
yeah, and I'll just leave you with one last thing. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm being like super preachy right now, but
I know. I like the all this wisdom.
okay. And the second, or not the second, but another item that I would like to share with you is that they've done studies in where uh, they've interviewed men and women, and when men apply for a job, uh, they only need to feel like they're 60% competent in the role in order to get the job before they apply. Can you guess what the percentage is for women, what they need to feel confident in before they apply?
100.
100, you
Wow.
know?
Okay.
And I think this study was done by the Harvard Business Review. And I think the reason why I bring that up is because um, it, like, literally whoever is 100% uh, completely qualified, uh,
Hmm.
like you have to be able to grow into roles and situations and take a little bit of a leap and learn how to like
Yes.
pull resources and get it as you go. And so yeah, go make it
All
happen.
right. Okay. I'll go. Hey, actually, that's very. It's really good to hear.
Yeah,
Um. Yeah. It's. I don't know. I always struggle with. Oh, just gotta get some more experience, get more skills before you jump onto whatever.
yeah,
Um. And you're right. When is it ever enough? So.
yeah. When is it ever enough? It's not gonna come, and so um yeah, i've I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Me
um
too.
yeah, I look forward to watching your career and seeing where it goes from here.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I will reach out for ideas on how to do a podcast.
Sure.
I've had such a great first time experience. And yeah, I think you have experience with photography, right?
I do. I do.
Right. So I guess we can talk about that too, because part of this documentation process was almost like a photojournalism um, project,
Yes, you should.
coupled with some stories.
And do you have
Uh,
any
it was
photography experience?
like professional. No,
Uh-huh.
I have my camera, and
What kind of
like I
camera do
took
you have?
I have a Canon DSLR.
Perfect. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's pretty good. I've got two lenses.
Yeah.
No, I know it's not enough for a photographer, but um, yeah, I'm kind of like interested in capturing these landscapes and the stories behind them as part of the visual documentation that we're speaking of. So,
It's going to be
um,
so important to do that. I think that you're on the right track to photograph these spaces that you want to explore. And you could also photograph things that you think are done wrong as well. You don't
Right.
necessarily have to exhibit them. You can, but it could just be a mental notation, and kind of archive that as well, and highlight
Mm-hmm.
works that you find interesting. Um, to me, it's the people, it's the human angle that I think
Right.
tells the best stories, especially in photography. If you're going to archive some kind of work like this, uh, so you're going to want to get your technical skills up in order
Right.
to do it, especially if you're going to be traveling.
Yes.
You're not going to have opportunities to retake things,
Yeah.
and moments in photography are very ephemeral, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be in situations that the situations themselves are going to be ephemeral, and you're going to want to
Yes.
have to be very confident with the camera to know which ISO settings, which exposure bracket,
Mm-hmm.
all of that to take, so that way you could properly pay homage
Yes.
to their
Yeah,
work.
there's a one summer when I was trying to document what public spaces are in African cities, and so I'd traveled like in 3 African cities, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna start snapping these photos just with my phone, right?
Mhm.
And then it became I felt uneasy because a lot of domestic activities were spilling over onto the street. So it was like very, very private things that were happening. And I was like, how how do I capture this without disrespecting the
Yeah.
subject and like not asking permissions? And it's like, so then I realized it's really difficult to take street photography. Do you ask before you take the photos?
So so I struggle with that a lot as well. And I think that there's many components to that. One of the component is to really believe in what you are doing, right? So
Mm,
if you are a shy photographer, you are not going to be a successful photographer. You are not going to be able to
mm,
capture the people, the movement, the ideas. And so one of the things that you should have is a very strong sensibility that what you are doing is important. The next thing that you need to have is you need to have a statement ready to go if anybody asks you, right?
mm,
So you don't want to be fumbling your words. Um,
right.
people are question you. You need to immediately say, um, "My name is Divine Nadimi. I am a photojournalist. This is my idea. This is what I'm trying to do." And you need to
Mm,
connect with them on a human level. 99% of the times, that's going to be enough, and they're going to be excited, and then they're going to grab you by the
mm,
hand, and they're going to say, "Come with me," and give you even more access. And then
mm,
the 1% where they don't, you just say, "I understand, I respect your space, I'm going to watch me as I delete these files right now." And that's it.
okay.
And then you chalk it up as
Right.
to your personal experience, and you respect their work, and then that's it. But
Right.
the last component of it is you have to know how to use your camera. You would be foolish if you took something like this on and weren't a competent photographer,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
because it's already nerve-wracking as it is photographing
Yeah.
people and spaces, but you're going to be in different light. You're going to be
Mm-hmm.
daylight, sunlight, dawn. dusk, night.
Yes.
You're going to be People are going to be moving fast. People are going to be moving
Mm-hmm.
slow, and you're going to have to be a very technical photographer as well. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to be a master, but you do have to understand the camera and its equipment.
Yes.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it's also disrespectful if you don't understand that and try to.
Right. Yeah.
It's disrespectful to the medium of photography. It's disrespectful to your work, and it's also disrespectful to the work of the people that you're trying to capture.
Right. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good point.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so I could definitely help you with that. I've taught two photography classes um, for landscape architecture at Cal Poly, and so um,
Okay.
I know how to. I've learned what people can are able to digest and what takes a little bit time to develop.
Okay. All
So
right. I guess.
yeah, I could help you with that for sure.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, do that. And yeah, you're gonna help me with photography and podcasts. This is this is
Yeah,
great.
this is fantastic. And another thing that if you're going to be traveling and you're going to be documenting, I would invest in a GoPro,
Mm,
those little action cameras.
yes.
They are waterproof, they are indestructible, they're very small. If you're like like need to get up and go, you could just grab it.
Right.
Um, and sometimes you're going to want to tell the story in video as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
yeah, that will work.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that's very good points. Yeah, I that's kind of like what I've been thinking about in terms of the documentation. It's
mhm,
um photography, so maybe a few videos and having somebody who actually does little uh like small documentaries help out with the final
mhm,
um product. And yeah, I think that would be powerful because it becomes accessible in easily.
yeah.
A lot of people would have access to it. Yeah,
I would love
that's
I
the
would
goal.
what I would love to see you is traveling and then interviewing people on site and asking them
Hmm.
questions and recording that. And have you thought
Yeah,
about that?
I definitely have, and I was actually talking to one of my friends about it, and I was like, okay, so that means that there needs to be some standing questions
Mm,
that, like, you ask to different people to really get a sense of almost like research, like, right, like
sure.
you ask the
Hmm.
same questions to see, and like getting those questions right so you have a good conversation and leaving enough space for information that you could have never thought of to also come
Hmm.
about.
Yeah.
um, so all that is part again of that research that I was thinking of. um, and part of that also is ethnobotanical research,
Yes. Hmm.
um, which is I find also very fascinating. So it's a lot of things, so I have to like find a way to like narrow it down, otherwise it's going to be really crappy in every aspect.
I think you'll be fine. Do you want to know one of the best things that you have going for you is
What
that
is it?
you have a really nice smile,
Oh,
and
thank you.
that puts people at ease and allows people to talk to you to more. So I have a very awkward smile, so it's like and so I have a harder time. I have to like eventually charm them somehow. But I think your advantage would be that like you flash them a really nice smile and like you'll be way ahead of my efforts immediately.
Well, I hope you're right.
So I
I don't
think
know.
I think my battery is gonna die. I could go on talking to you
Okay.
forever, but I don't want the recording to not process. So
Right.
I'm gonna say bye, and
Yes.
I
Thank you.
guess. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying thank you. It's been great talking.
Yeah. So instead of saying bye, let's say to be continued.
Absolutely. Yes, because I have a lot of I gotta pick your brains about a lot of things.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay. Cheers.
Okay.
Okay.
Cheers. Bye
Bye.
bye.